Well, welcome to the Lost Rewatch as we go into season 6. We're past LAX. We're doing with What Kate Does and The Substitute. How's it going?
Good. Thanks for having us.
I don't know who it was last week that said was it you, Caleb, or maybe Jeremiah had said with the flash forwards, or flash sideways, I'm just kind of not into them.
I think it was Sam.
Yeah, that I was the first time around. So
yeah, I'm beginning to see his point of view.
Yeah.
I'll do a counterpoint. These flash sideways allow the actors to, I think, fully realize their character's potential. What would Locke look like, if he had a little bit more hope given, or nice, somebody was nice to him, that kind of a thing. So I'm really liking it, actually, as much or more than I did the first time.
So you're saying where Locke, we're going to skip to the second episode of The Substitute.
No,
where he's stuck on his lift stops, and he just jumps on. He just dives into the grass, and the sprinklers come on. Old Locke would have just would have lost it.
Yeah, and or even when he's next to Hugo's car and he loses control in front of Hurley, and Hurley takes him in. He says, "Hey, man, Randy's a douche. I get it. Let me give you a job offer." But everything, even in LAX, when he's talking to Jack at the end in the airport, and they exchange niceties, and John's able to comfort Jack. This is what these sidewayses are all about, as far as I'm concerned. And in the Kate episode, all the stuff with Kate and Claire and Aaron, for as messy as that was on the island and in previous seasons, this is an opportunity to wipe the slate clean and just be like, hey, these characters get along. Yeah. So I like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I personally, I like the concept of the flash sideways, and I think that the writers, it goes in theme with the writers' idea of the show in season 1. And I think the show, which, it didn't divert away from the theme of purgatory, basically. I don't think it diverted away from it, but it went and had so many other interesting plates to spin in the air until they were ready to do their conclusion. And they just honed back in on what they always were doing, more or less. And so I think it feels kind of threadbare a little bit. We had so many plates spinning in season 4, 5, with Whitmore, and there was just so much mythology that we were kind of distracted by. And I feel like they just said, and I remember them saying in the press releases before the season aired, because there was no trailers or promotions showing any clips from the show for this season. So all they kind of could do was kind of give us a sense of what it might be like. So the first thing I remember them showing was, I think it was at Comic-Con, was the poster for this season. And it was it showed, if you've seen the season 6 poster, it has obviously, if you've seen it, all of the characters on that background, which they used the same background for season 1. And so I remember seeing the Comic-Con reaction of Boone, then Shannon and Echo. And so their whole premise of that they were only selling, or they weren't showing clips, was that this was going to be a curtain call season. And it would be very reminiscent of season 1. So I personally was really psyched. And when you see what we got, I was really pumped that we got a character-focused season again, because season 1 was the most, and season 2 and 3, they all were character-centric, but the most was season 1, right? It was extremely character-centric. Right. And I was glad that we returned to that, because I think that was the show when it was really at its strongest. I just think that there was so much else that the show became almost burdened with by season 6, that we aren't actually able to really fully focus in on those character arcs. And when we do, it feels like it's slowing the pace down from the action. So I love the concept. I like seeing the strokes of what the characters are if there was a what if scenario.
Yeah.
To me, it's just a case of pacing that doesn't work with the on-island story. And I think sometimes the dialogue and the sort of the speed of which situations happen in juxtaposition with how the pacing of things took in real life on the island, there's like a sped up version of things. So it sometimes feels a bit rushed. And like they've known each other a second and yet they're already forming this bond. So it pushes like the suspense of disbelief more. So you're already kind of getting this feeling that it's not a very grounded, realistic, like a flashback storyline, right? They always felt very realistic. This, from the get-go, always felt quite fake and Truman Showy. It never felt like the really authentic, dramatic feel of the first season to second, third season flashback. So there was always something very off about it. And that, to me, was on the first rewatch, and it still sticks with me now. All I can say that on a rewatch is that it's purgatory. So what you can just do this time is be like, well, it makes sense why it's weird. You can just embrace it for what it is. So it doesn't have the mystery of you trying to have to figure out what it is. You could just go, okay, so this is Kate's way of, like, in her moment between her death and her moving on. This is her unfulfilled wishes, or what she wanted or needed to remember before she could move on. The same for John. So it's an interesting epilogue, I would say. And that's great for character arc resolution. So, I mean, like I said, I dig season 1 the most. I dig the characters. I dig that was what the show was rooted in. And so I really enjoy it, but I get why people have problems. Sorry, that was quite long, but
just think about the balls on a show to do an epilogue in front of you, like throughout the entire final season, right, is simultaneously carrying the characters to a conclusion, but also, giving a eulogy.
Right.
For all of that.
That's a great way of putting it. Yeah.
I think a lot of people have issues with just the Flash Sideways because of, obvious reasons. But I think overall, season 6, I think there's a lot of hit or miss storylines, both in the Flash Sideways and on Island. So while all episodes may be considered good or great or whatever, there are still some like storylines that should have been fixed quicker, or there was too much time dedicated to it, or whatever. And that's both scenarios. But I do think that it's really intriguing to see these characters like Kate. I spoke about last time how the Flash Sideways is always showing mirrors and they're reflecting into themselves. And, there's two Kates running around. And at this point, you don't really know what's happening. But just like, you mentioned Locke, falling onto the grass and then the sprinklers turning on. That was just an excellent parallel to him sitting on the beach and it raining. Just an excellent point. But I know that's skipping ahead a bit. But anyway, back to that.
Yeah, no, that's great. And they do that through that season. To me, like, there's always an element of it sort of feeling a bit weird, but those little touches are constant throughout the season in the Sideways. And so that, to me, just shows that they were trying where they could to really be as smart as they could. Like, I just think sometimes it was like, when they do a treatment of the script, it's like Kate needs to meet with Claire, like, that's all good. But then you write the dialogue for it, and dialogue needs to be organic. It needs to flow like a conversation does. But when you put people in a situation where they just meet, or they're like, I'm in a cab with you, and then I hijack the cab and then I leave you, it just feels forced and not how people behave in real life. So that's where I feel like the whole season in the Sideways sometimes feels stilted and a bit like not the best writing, whereas we're used to it feeling natural and organic, kind of the dialogue. So I have that kind of, as a writer, sort of part. My brain's like, some of this is I
always wondered why Kate just didn't let Claire leave, because Claire just got out of the cab. Just let her get up.
Yeah.
No, it's the gun at her. No.
problem so that they come back and then there's a resolution. It's very much that. A lot of the episodes in the Sideways are quite like that. And it goes back to, and you can explain it on a second watch, but on a first watch, it always feels weird. And I still think Lost was always good that even on a first watch of an episode, even though there was always a weird reason for something being weird, things always still felt like that was meant to be. Like, I can go back to season 1, the Hearts and Minds episode with Boone and Shannon, right? You don't know what that is in that episode when the monster's there and why he's tied up and stuff, but you're still willing to go along with it because the show is weird and it does these things. And then you find out what it is and you're like, it makes sense. So on a first watch or a second rewatch, like, you buy it. Whereas I feel like with season 6, there's like this element of, I'll get it on the second watch because now I know what it is. But you should be able to feel like that on a first and a rewatch. I personally think. So yeah, the second watch, like a rewatch, it always kind of is like, I get it. They're like in some kind of shared fantasy dreamland where these are all manifestations of their subconscious. So things are going to be a bit odd, but they make sense emotionally, if that makes sense.
Now, when it was originally on, did you guys figure it out that that's what it was?
I was rooting hard for the alternate universe, the timeline skewed into a tangent and created an alternate future. I was really, especially later when Desmond started visiting back and forth, I was like, oh shit, this is total like two different times. I like that it wasn't that because I like being fooled in that way. Right. I feel like those were the two big theories, right? Either they're all dead or there's an alternate universe. That
the bomb made,
split.
Yeah, and that's I think that was the biggest theory out there.
I thought that they were, I mentioned last time, bleeding into one another. Like they split into two, but they were slowly bleeding over. That's why they were kind of, like in the cab, Kate and Jack, they had that moment of, wait, I recognize you, but then she keeps on driving away.
Yeah.
So I felt like, and Jack had the blood on his neck and everything like that. So everybody was like, "Oh, I think they're bleeding into one another." And by the end, you thought that it would be one timeline and somehow crisscross. I don't know.
It's funny. I never thought it was the alternate. So I personally hated that idea. So I didn't think it was because I thought that would be really bad writing. Just like worst writing you could do, since so much of the show was dependent on everything having happened and those rules being hit over the head in season 5 and it just being dramatic. Like, life doesn't work like that. There's more dramatic weight to the story if everything happened as it was and that they can't change it. Like, I don't want to know that the last several seasons meant nothing, like, and the last second, like, as an allegory to life, like, it doesn't matter about your whole life. At the last moment, you're going to get to join a Flash Sideways version of everything that could have happened to you. Like, that's like, that gives complete, like, it pulls the carpet out of meaning of everything in your life that ever happened. So I personally hated it. So I never felt like there were all these red herrings, like, pointing to be that. And I was like, they're so badly wanting us to think this. Like, I just can't subscribe to that. Like, so I didn't know what it was. But on a thematic level, I was like, I know what they're going for. Like, they're all lost. They were always lost. And this is them finding themselves. Now, how is that going to be explained? I don't think it's going to be a sideways science fiction trickery thing. It's going to be a more spiritual thing. But I was like, there might be a science fiction element to it, but it's not because she hit the bomb and reset the island. I was like, that is definitely not what it is. I was like, it's going to be something we had not learned about, either the island, like Jacob and the Man in Black, like there was some extra set of rules or something, or it was something like, I actually never thought it was going to be what it was, which is pageantry, because I just thought that was almost maybe too obvious, and we were so past that. Like, they talked about that seasons ago. So I never had a firm idea, but I just definitely never liked the alternate universe idea. So. Yeah, I felt like glad that it wasn't that in the end.
What about the temple story?
Was rewarded.
What about the temple story? Because a lot of people don't like the whole temple story.
I had forgotten about all of that was in this season. And I was like, oh, these guys.
You get tired of them real fast.
You really do. That's because they really go hard on the torturing of Saeed.
Yeah.
I think that the whole like whether he's infected or not, and I'm like, are we just cycling through all the past seasons red herrings of like infection, disease, he won't be the same as he was before, Blackwater, drowning, life. This is like written on page, written on paper, all like it needs to be light and it needs to be dark and it needs to be contaminated water because there's contaminated Saeed. And I was so sick of it that by the end I didn't care what their motivations are. And this is just four episodes in.
Yeah. Well, did they feel he was a smoke monster and that's what they were? I mean, I know that was a theory.
The test made it seem that way. They were electrocuting him. I was like, this is great. They're testing. But then why poison him? You know?
Well, the ultimate thing I think is that the show was always very good at peeling back the layers of the onion. And at the center was like the heart of the island and Jacob and the Man in Black. Like that's the center of this whole story. And like we find out about that at the end of season 5. Like the temple and Dharma and they're on like this extra outer layer of the onion. So we're like further in on the story at this point. Like we don't care so much about like the workings of the temple really. I feel like it's like it was going back to a thing we'd introduced at the end of season 3 when they say, oh, there's this temple. Now, if you'd revealed that like season 4, 5 and done the whole thing like that they were testing for people infected, I bet we would have really enjoyed it because we hadn't got to like the real big game at that point. So any like little bit of more mythology would have been interesting. So it was just like past the fact at this point that we were onto bigger things, and it was like they could have done that in an earlier season, and I'm sure we would have found that interesting. It's just
I just had the thought, what if it was Claire? Because they say that they met her. They talk about Claire being infected in that way too. But if Claire hadn't been written out, they could have picked up the temple storyline during season 5 when all the rest of the stuff was happening.
So season 4 was cut short by the writer's strike. So I feel like season 4 could have been longer than they wanted it to be. And season 5, I think, was about the same like the season 6, but both season 6 and 5 were like 3 to 4 episodes shorter than the first 3 seasons. So, I mean, like if they were all like how many 20 to 25 episodes as the first 3 seasons were, they would have had more time to do that, I'm sure. Like it just became something they felt like they needed to tick off the list because people would be going, what about the temple and what about the infection and where did Claire go? It really feels like that when you watch it.
I had actually wrote in my notes, I put Dogan and Saeed, shock value and torture for torture's sake. I'm over it at this point.
Right.
Because it was like, why are we having to be so like kind of graphic about this?
Oh,
like
and especially
they
Saeed.
just went through the whole process of him like dying and then not, and now we got to go through it again. And is the pill poison or not? It's like, how many extra lives is he going to get?
I get it. The torture thing is to like set up that he's going to have his episode, and his whole thing is always about either capturing someone, like he gets captured by Rousseau in his first flashback episode, or the next one is about capturing Henry, right? And Enter 77 is interrogating and whether we should kill Mikhail. Like they always have his story arc around either being captured or tortured or being not trusted. So like that was like getting the centric episode set up for him by having been tortured. They could have just had him like doing something else, but they do it for that reason, I think.
That's interesting. Yeah, because at that point, I mean, he's got no secrets and he's saying as much. He's like, I'll tell you anything you want to know. That's not fun to torture somebody who's like, I'll gladly tell you anything you want to know. Just ask me a question.
But I remember the time going, is that Saeed? I mean, because there was so many questions about it.
Right.
Is it Saeed? And I know a lot of people said they should have just killed Saeed off instead of bringing this around. Because like the whole season 5, we didn't have any of Claire, right? There was no Claire in season 5. And I think the reason they didn't want to bring the temple into season 5 is because season 5 was just perfect. I mean,
it was doing so much.
I feel like season 5 is very complete. There's nothing I would add to that or take away. Maybe add it, make it longer, add stuff more in the middle. But like the arc of that whole journey is really, really great. I would say nothing more needs to go in.
Yeah.
I do like Sawyer does acknowledge how unfair life is due to the fact that Saeed tortured so many people and he shot young Ben when Juliet tried to save him. And I thought, I was like, he's saying exactly what the audience is thinking right now.
Yeah.
Sawyer's in
that.
such a dark place. He is in such a dark place. It's nice to see him kind of crawl out. But
well, that's like a huge traumatic death, you know. I mean, Desmond sees, you know, Charlie, but you don't really get the ramifications of that, where you have like two lovers and this like drastic, you know, brutal death where she's gone, but then, oh no, she's here, we might have a chance again. So he's been kind of jerked through the ringer because he thought, you know, I'm going to help her up. Oh no, I couldn't. Oh, she's down there, I'm going to get her, you know, back. And so
in the end, he blames himself. When he was talking with Kate on the pier,
which he never does, by the way. He's always blaming somebody else.
But he's been changed. I mean,
which he still blames Jack.
Yeah, well, yeah, obviously, but with Juliet, changed was so good for Sawyer.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we've said 1,000 times it made him whole again.
Yeah, I've got 2 points to add to this. One of them, which me and Caleb talked about when we had a little chat about just Juliet, the character, and I was talking about Juliet's death scene, and I was saying like it's unique in that like I was like putting a theory out like there's different camps of how the death scenes tend to go down. Most of them are either like quite brutal and sudden, like someone gets shot and it's like the end of the episode cliffhanger, or it's like a really drawn out one where you have like a good episode to like know, okay, they're gonna die, like Charlie or like Libby got shot and you're probably like, she's gonna die, or Boone, like he's gonna die. Like whereas Juliet, like there was this perfect blend of the sudden shock of like Shannon getting shot or Anna Lucia, like just gut punch because it's happening right in front of you, but you are like given this 30 seconds of them to say their goodbyes. Like it had like the double impact of shock, but also like watching someone slowly suffer in front of you was really hard. I don't know, that to me is like quite different from the others, and like just facing like the really ugliness of someone about to die is gut-wrenching. Most of the time the characters had a moment to say their goodbyes, or us with them. Like it really was so gut-wrenching. And like the second thing I was going to say is that I think that really they wanted to pull their characters back to a slightly dark place for the beginning of the season, essentially. They wanted to be reminiscent of season 1. I feel like, again, they wanted to show that they came from those salty, dark places in the beginning of their characters. So as much as Sawyer and Juliet were one of my favorite couples, I kind of like that Sawyer we're reminded of his edge and how far he's come a little bit. I wish that Juliet and Sawyer had a happy ending, non-sideways, but I think that it makes his character fully complete, and that you see that full transition when you're reminded again of how much he had a beef with Jack. You see that here, and Saeed. It's like a nod to the fact that they never got on at the start. Like, so
yeah, he says he's not my friend too. He completely distances.
Yeah, he's like, I don't care.
And like even season 5, that place, I swear, where they take Saeed to get tortured and Sawyer's with them, they're like in the bamboo forest. It looks identical to the place where he gets the splintered things in his fingernails.
It is.
Right. It looks identical. So like there's like little reminders of the journey we've been on, and when they do this. So yeah.
I do remember one theory out there, because in this season, Hurley's wearing a big red shirt.
Mm-hmm.
It was the red shirt theory that Hurley was going to die because he had a red shirt on. So
yeah,
I
Juliet had just.
Yeah, and I'm like going, oh wait, that's right. I forgot about the red shirt theory. So many people out there thought he was going to die because he had a red shirt on.
I'm so glad that didn't happen.
No, that was a big theory.
Did anyone ever think that? Like really, seriously, like genuine?
Yeah.
Really, I just never even thought it. Like, so if it had happened, I would have been shocked. Like, because I'd never considered it. Like, I was like, they're never going to kill it.
The show, since really I guess maybe since Boone, but Charlie's death, they really showed that they would kill anybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I didn't. It was just such a big part of the comedy and the humor of the show.
Right.
Yeah.
It would have been a huge part of the show losing one of its appeals, I would say.
It'd have been a huge risk to
Really
do.
big. I don't think it
wasn't
was
final season, but plus Hurley had he was, even Miles says, "Oh, you're our leader now," or something to that effect, because Hurley's making decisions, whereas he was always well.
Right. It's Hurley's recent contact with Jacob that gets him into the temple to begin with, and Hurley. Although that's something I would say they've been hinting at since season 4, since Confirmed Dead. Hurley's ability to talk to the dead, or Hurley's sort of drive and connection with Jacob and others like him that have passed on in the island. Like the island was pulling Hurley. We really started to see the pull that exists between Hurley and the power structure of the island. I think back then it was like sprinkled in.
Yeah, and that only started happening in season 4 because season 3, obviously end of season 3, like they just were like got the permission to end the series at that point. So
right.
They were like, we know that they knew that Jack was going to die like ages ago, but they didn't, I think, know. Now they know that Jacob and Man in Black are like the deity figures of like this show now, and we're going to have a person take over Jacob's position. It's not going to be Jack, or maybe Jack will be it for a bit, but he's going to hand it over to someone else so that we end the show on a good note. Who's it going to be? Like, okay. And then they pick Hurley, I think. Like, but everything all up then, I think.
But everything they showed us from season 1 to season 6, would Jack have been the right person?
Sorry?
I was fully expecting it to be Jack.
Take over the island. Would Jack have been the right person to take over the island?
I don't think to take over the island.
But be the new Jacob.
Yeah, and that's what we got. Like when he becomes Jacob and he takes that, I was like, yeah, that makes total sense. And then him dying, I was like, that also makes total sense. It's like the hero that achieves the goal, and then he's not just the hero, but he is our surrogate into the story. So he leaves and we leave. Like it began with him, it ends with him. So it was like he becomes the leader, but he does need to leave because we are going to leave this show. So we need to know that it's okay. And Hurley was the best person to leave him with. So, yeah.
Jack is like, if I would have known, all it would have taken was for me to like unplug the cork and plug it back in again, and it take 5 minutes, I would have just been done. It takes like 6 seasons, and then he's like, "Okay, I've done my thing. You
forget about all the mistakes.
You can be the leader forever."
If things had been different and we'd never lost Echo, I think Echo would have been the one that dies and then is resurrected, and Smokey takes Echo's form. And I think that meant Locke might have lived, and I think that meant Locke might have been given the island potentially. Like, that would have been satisfying because he was always the one that believed in it, was like the first to believe in it. And Hurley is a great guy to leave as the leader, but I think it would be if Locke had never died, someone had taken that role of the Smokey as I think they were setting Echo up to be that effectively.
I think that would have made fans happy because of the way Locke, he's a fan favorite, but I go to where I don't think because I think Sawyer in the second episode, The Substitute, Sawyer is great at reading people, and he goes, "Yeah, you're not Locke."
Mm-hmm.
Locke was afraid.
Yeah, Locke was afraid.
I couldn't have put it better myself.
Yeah,
like since season 5, when we see this other guy who looks like Locke, what's different about him? At first, I said it was confidence. It's not confidence. It's that
Yeah.
It's the fear. It's the fear that you're wrong. It's the fear that you're every bit as pathetic and ridiculous as some of the scenes that they still show. And Terry Quinn, my God, how he can do both. He can do Locke on the worst day of Locke's life, diminished, hurt, powerless. And then he can do just everything that the Man in Black is doing now, all the good, zingers and all the physical force. He's just great.
It must have been a lot of fun for Terry O'Quinn because, like I said, it gave him such a range. I mean, he's a fantastic actor anyway, but it gave him such a range because, the first, 4 seasons he's playing the guy that just, is angry and can't get things, obviously don't tell me what I can't do. And everything just goes, like the whole with the wheelchair, and the substitute falling over. That's his life in a nutshell. Whereas season 5, like I said, I think I said last week, I remember when we were podcasting about that, I kept going, God, there's something different. Maybe the dying and coming back. I was onto it, but I didn't know. I assumed it was still Locke, even though they had told us dead is dead, and everything they had told us. I kept going, yeah, he's different. I like this Locke. This
Locke is special.
Locke is special.
I would follow this Locke, where I wouldn't follow the Locke for the first 4 seasons. There's no way, because that Locke was a mess.
Do you know what I really feel like I wish we had was just an episode where we saw, I guess, the events of season 5, episode 7, Life and Death of Jeremy Bentham, and actually knowing that is the last time we get to spend time with him, because I don't feel like we really absorbed this episode in season 5 really with that sense of finality, of closure of his character, and realizing how tragic it is, because we're still waiting for like the other penny to drop on what does it all mean. And I think like we realize what it means later on, but we don't really get to like feel it in the moment. And if you rewatch that scene, if you rewatch that episode, it's a lot more powerful and impactful. And for me, a character that was one of the second biggest character, along with Jack O'Leary Desmond and Hurley, like to have a death scene that you don't really know how to emotionally react to is a bit bad. Like, not that they didn't write it bad, like they wrote it badly. It's just I wish like we could just like have felt it the first time, because I was sad the first time I saw it, but I knew it was going to come back. So I feel like that's where, again, the show was, they were trying to run to the end, that they trying to stuff things in. And if you remember how much time we had in season 1, 2, and 3 to like stretch out some of these amazing emotional moments, like it would have been great to have really, really seen like how tragic his end to his character was. And I think they try to show and address that by having what we see in the end of season 6 is, like you said, it's a eulogy. Like they go back to that, and Ben says, "I'm sorry for what I did." Like they try to bring it back to that. But I just wish we'd had the awareness of what was going on, really, that he was being killed, and that was the end for him at that moment.
Yeah, I think that's fair. But even in these episodes, or was it the premiere? Locke tells Ben, he says, "You want to know what Locke was thinking when you killed him? This last moment, the last thought of his head." It's like you're still calling back that scene of
Right.
I think they're really drawing attention to it, because of, I guess, almost reminding people that there's a powerful moment. Go back and watch it, because I agree with you completely that like. Yeah, watching it it's so impactful.
But the only problem is if we knew Locke was, that part of Locke was gone into season 4,
you wouldn't be tricked.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you'd be asking who's this fool in his body for an entire season longer than they wanted you to.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I think they did try to, because whereas they're all Frank and Alana are ready to get to go, Sun goes, well, what about Locke?
Yeah.
She goes, we should bury him.
It's just like so pitiful at this point that he's just this body being dragged. I'm like, one of the best characters. Like,
but it would have been worse though if they just had left him on the
beach. Yeah, because Frank has a line about he's getting pretty ripe. And it's like, oh man.
Yeah. Well, even his funeral scene, I feel so like the Ben thing, it's like touching, and then Frank makes a joke to undercut the moment, and it's like that's just like not enough for his character. It's just really I
like that he was buried on the beach where they first crashed.
Yeah,
I love everything about that.
And that's no matter what it
took to get him there.
That's something I'm still struggling with, is because I know that they were kind of deep in the jungle when Juliet died, but just her being separate, from everybody after she integrated with them and helped them out so much. That's always been like how far was the beach? Because Sawyer didn't want to go, and he ended up leaving the temple anyway. So you could have still written his story arc away, and he's grieving and blah blah.
Yeah.
But anyway, but I do want to mention something really fast because
can the dead talk to each other? Because what was it? What was that play? Is it Our Town?
Aren't the whispers the dead people?
You mean No Exit?
No, I'm talking. There was a play out. Anyway, where the dead actually spoke to each other, and it's been a while since I've seen it. But anyway, I'm just wondering if Juliet being by herself out there, can Boone talk to Locke now? Was he buried next to Locke and Shannon and all that stuff? Can they communicate?
Sideways.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Because Miles can talk to him. I'm just wondering if they can talk to him.
Yeah.
Well, and that's kind of why Juliet was buried where she was, wasn't it? Is they needed a place that was secluded so Sawyer could basically force Miles to
Got
read
it. And it may have been more difficult for him to read her around a bunch of other bodies.
Oh, well, that's a possibility. I think too, like that was so like Sawyer had a need. And that's what I love about that interaction is that Miles, is still calling him boss. He's like, don't call me boss. I ain't your boss anymore. That's over. And then forces him to do what he can do for Sawyer's own gratification. And Miles is, I think, feeling a little bit violated. Like he's going to run with it, but he's like ultimately, was like, this is wrong. You shouldn't be doing this. So I feel like Sawyer I would want to say he didn't care about where he buried Juliet, but it was somewhere away from everybody else, like away from the other living Losties, because he needed Miles in him. Like he needed Miles to get him what he needed.
Mm-hmm.
Could Miles have got that without burying her?
I feel like that's an option, but I feel like that if I was writing it, I would think that's not a good reason for them not to do it. I feel like it's just because Sawyer's in such grief that he needs to bury her and it be about him and her, like just them. I think that's like he had 3 years, just him and her, and the Losties are like this family, like this, but the nucleus of that was him and Juliet. And I think he doesn't really want to go to their beach camp because he's not been there in several years.
Yeah.
I think it's not the first thought he thinks of is the beach camp. And plus, the people in the beach camp were the people that just came and did the Jughead exploit and brought all this trouble on them. I think in his heart that he that's why in the Sideways they all come together, that's family. But right now he's just so mad and he just wants to be with her and wants to bury her. And I just don't think he would go to the beach camp because it's not far away. We see it's like the hatch and it's not far. It's just I think he just needs to bury her and be alone with her and.
Because they ruined his life. They ruined his life because he says over and over again, "We had a good thing here till you guys showed up." He says it several times in season 5.
Yeah, so you're not gonna go to good memories place, let's down here. I'm mad at these people. I love them to death, but this is not about them right now. I feel it's kind of where he's coming.
And that's why he goes straight back to the barracks and grabs the shoebox with the stuff in it.
Exactly. And it's once he's buried, he's like, I'm going back there. He needs to be there. That was where he had 3 years. So yeah.
I do want to point out, first of all, the episode title, What Kate Does, compared to the season 2 episode, What Kate Did, which is, a parallel. But something I literally just realized is, so we mentioned earlier how Kate hijacks the taxi and how she, reflects to herself in the mirror. And what she does is she goes back and she helps this person. Old Kate would have never done that. She would run. So now I'm remembering, and I don't know, how the Flash Sideways is a little bit different than what really happened, in their real life. So remember when Kate is I don't know if it's her car or whatever, she takes Tom's car.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'll go with you. So he willingly goes with her and gets shot.
Mm-hmm.
Claire, it's the opposite. She's held hostage but survives.
Right.
So I just kind of put that together in terms of Kate kind of, taking somebody hostage versus somebody, going with her. So I don't know if that has any, bearings for anything, but it's another parallel that's a little bit the same, a little bit different.
Yeah, there's so many parallels, really are. Another thing you mentioned about the title, What Kate Does, referencing to what Kate did. Yeah. The episodes preceding the season, after like episode 6, it stops, but it's the same order as season 1. It's Tabula Rasa is episode 3, and What Kate Does is episode 3. Walkabout is episode 4, and its Substitute is the Locke's episode. And then it's White Rabbit is Jack, and then this is the Lighthouse, which will be the next one we'll talk about. After that, it stops. But like they were just basically trying to reference to season 1. Again, that's what they said in all the promotional stuff. Like it's going to be like season 1, so they were doing that kind of little touch again, a little parallel. Yeah.
What's funny, I benefited from the reminders back to season 5, like when Sawyer leaves the temple area and Jack and Kate's of course going to go after him because that's what Kate does. He specifically says, "Don't follow me." She's a second later is like, "I got this. I can go after him." But Jack pulls her closer and says, like, "Be careful." And they're like inches away from one another. I'm like, it clicked for me as a viewer. I was like, "Oh yeah, they were like faux married." Like they raised Aaron together. Like they had 3 years pretty recently, just like Juliet and Sawyer did, where they were real close like that. It was strange, but they were real close. And the cues, because what is happening currently on screen doesn't immediately call that back necessarily. Like it doesn't make it apparent. I had to be reminded, I think, that they were together.
Yeah. I mean, they really hit the ground running. You know, if you think about it, from the incident to when Jack closes his eyes, it is like 7 days, maybe. Yeah. So, I mean, when you see Jack put on the blue shirt, I think in season 5, when Juliet confronts him getting out of the shower, I mean, that's his death outfit, basically. You know, I mean, they're that close, you know, to the end.
So rushed. But I get it. It's just like they had so much time in the show in like the earlier seasons, and then the biggest things happen within like a week or two. It's just like, okay. But what I was gonna say was what was I gonna say? I lost my thought when you brought about the blue shirt for some reason. I
don't know why.
Why that just took me off the topic. But
do we know why Jen did not go with Kate?
He wanted to find Sun.
Yeah.
But yeah, he asked her, you know, where did your plane land? And she's like, I don't know, you know. But I'm like, why wouldn't you go? And I mean, Kate obviously has a mission. She's trying to find Claire. Sun's around somewhere. Why wouldn't? I mean, he basically just went off on his own. What did he think was going to happen on this crazy island with people looking? I mean, they had just knocked out, you know, the Aldo or whatever, which was really nice seeing him because I've seen It's Always Sunny since post Lost. So,
well, how did he end up in the? I asked this last week with Cindy, the airline flight attendant. How does Aldo end up in the temple also?
Well, in season 3, when Ben wants Locke to sacrifice Locke's dad, he sends everybody to the temple.
That's true. That's okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think with Jin, I think he just he's not going to follow Kate anywhere, because they screwed it. They you know he saw how when they came back, everything bad happened again, right?
No, I think he's going to look for her at the beach camp, and she said she's definitely going to the barracks to find Sawyer. So he's like, why would she be at the barracks? Like, if the place that they most likely would go is where we spent several months together. Like, you know, like I know my wife, she knows me. That's probably our first thought of going to. I'm going to check that out. I just don't think she's going to be at the barracks. I'll go with you maybe, but it's taking time away from me finding Sun. I've got to go there. Like, I feel like that's what it is.
The other element, because I think it's a good question too. Like, oh yeah, why does Jin just allow himself to be alone and stranded in the woods? But he just had 3 years on the island. He's probably an expert navigator at this point.
True. Yeah.
So like,
that was part of his job.
Yeah. The grid. He knows all the grids. So I feel like it should be Kate that's worried about being on her own, because, you know, she's got her amateur or intermediate tracker skills at this point, but she didn't live there with a grid system like Jin did. So she should be looking to him. to guide.
Plus with Jin, he's been separated from Sun for 3 years.
Well, yeah. See, the problem is they traveled back, so he was gritting 1977, not 2007. Hence, why Claire's traps is,
Of course, there's like a disadvantage, but I think there's a degree of like they've sort of seen the island for 3 years. They've had a long time to really get around and explore it, and they know the map. So there might be new things dotted on the map, but they know the map. Like if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So he's kind of just like, I'm gonna roll with it. If there's an obstacle, there's an obstacle. Like I've got to find my wife at this point. I more or less know my way around here.
So the scene on the dock was like super sad.
Yeah.
Very like heartbreaking. You finally see Sawyer just like overcome with emotion. And then like, of course, he blames himself, says that he was going to propose to her, and, says that he should have let her go. Do we believe him when he says that, it was me because I didn't want to be alone? Do we believe him then? And should he have let Juliet go?
I think I believe him. I think he really believes that he's probably thinking if I let her go, she'd be alive.
I can see that. Yeah, that's where his mind is like, and I think it's true. To be honest, I think he really was feeling like that. I think he was afraid that go back to 1997. What was it? The place Ann Arbor or something.
Yeah.
And hang around there. I don't really have a home there. I'm more home here. But if you go and everyone else decides to go along with you, I don't have no identity, no location at all. Like I need someone that's familiar from the last month or so in my life before I'm completely stranded here. So yeah, it was a selfish choice, but I think they all made a selfish choice, which ended up being a group choice and staying, if that makes sense.
Well, with Sawyer also, I said it before, with Juliet, he had for the first time in his life happiness. Mm-hmm. He was happy. I mean, like I said, when he sees them come back, and then of course Juliet starts getting not upset, but she's thinking, oh, James had feelings for Kate, he's going to leave me, and you had that whole thing going on there. But Sawyer, he was at his, and she was happy also. They both were happy. Mm-hmm. They were good for each other. Mm-hmm. The Lossies coming back screwed everything up. So he's saying at this point, well, if we got it all screwed up, I should have just let her go.
Mm.
Yeah, they were kind of already in a bit like almost like in a sideways situation. They were like, we've been through hell and earth. Like, are we even alive at this point? Are we in hell or we're in like heaven? Like, back and forth in time. Like, we might as well just settle down. Like, you're good looking, I'm good looking. We get on. Like, just settled in life, because anything weird could happen next. So it was almost like, I don't even think like Jack, Kate, everyone coming back was like them trying to mess it up. I think it was just a wake up call. Like we were in the real world for 3 years. It still exists. You can go there. And I think that broke the bubble for them. And then suddenly they were like, wait, we're going to have to do this for real in the real world, maybe. Like, that's scary. Like, so yeah, they were in a kind of a sideways world. They were in a sort of a non-reality for 3 years. And it is kind of a heaven for anyone, because you're not anymore in the present. You just, everything that's about to happen. So you shouldn't have any fear. That's kind of heaven, right? So I'm not surprised that they were less than happy, because anyone would be less than happy when suddenly you're woken up to the fact that, oh, we're going to have to jump back to 2007 and maybe get off the island, or maybe go and get jobs again. And that's the reality. So I think that aside from them coming back and obviously her dying, like Jack coming back and everyone was just like the beginning that they needed to wake up to they had lives outside the island. They have futures.
But did Sawyer have a life outside the island? Sawyer was he was a con man. He was not. He hated life. He hated everybody. Right. He even on the island. It wasn't until he went to Dharma, and he was respected. People liked him. Mm-hmm. They feared him a little bit because he never wanted to go against LaFleur. He had a love. Someone who he loved and cared about, who he never had before.
He didn't have
even with Kate. He I mean, there was no love connection there. It was more of a
I feel like they're still playing with that. They're still playing the Kate Sawyer stuff.
Yeah.
And it's really
disrespectful. Complete disrespect.
Juliet is barely cold in the ground, and they're already having Kate go to the other end of the island for Sawyer. Oh my god.
Jen's blocked, but they do clarify it.
I liked their friendship because they did have friendship. There was always like chemistry, but there was always platonic friendship there as well. That's why I liked, you know, I never was like shipping them as a couple, but I did like them as a relationship, platonic or what. They had a relationship really for the good 3 or 4 seasons before they left and went different ways. And so I was like, no, like it's just gonna grate on people because it's like doing that quadrangle thing again. But I was like, that makes perfect sense. They were like friends for so long, and he was her best friend out of even more than Claire, really, to be honest. Claire became a big part later. I get why she goes there. It doesn't grate on me and like, oh, she's trying to get with him again. I never think of it in that way. I just see it as like, you're someone who I care dearly about, and I was looking after your daughter for 3 years. Like I'm here for you, and I want you to get back to the real world so you can see her. Like she's almost just, she went back for Claire, but I think as soon as she finds him and that he's alive, I think she's there to bring him back too. So I get it, but it could annoy people. I get it.
It is kind of disrespectful, though.
Yeah. So, 2 things. First of all, Kate or maybe 3 or 4 things here. Kate and Sawyer were like hookup buddies for like 2 months. That's the extent that I see that as. Second of all, I feel like the question was answered regarding Kate in this episode, because she said, you know, to Sawyer, I came back and I hope that I could get Aaron reunited with Claire, and maybe all of this we had done wouldn't have been for nothing. And I'm kind of like, that's a little disrespectful. Juliet just died. Don't say like her death was for the purpose of you to bring Claire back. Let's not talk like that right now. And also, somebody you mentioned earlier, Samuel, about how Sawyer and Juliet kind of held down in Dharma, and that was their 3 years worth of happiness, and they just settled down because of all the crazy. So that reminded me of the Rose and Bernard scene in the incident where they, said we've settled down and we don't want to have anything to do with anything else going outside of our bubble. And that had kind of always a little bit rubbed me the wrong way. I completely understand that they did that. And I know Rose and Bernard are kind of like lauded as these people who were just the most peaceful on the island, things like that. But I think it's worth critiquing or maybe acknowledging that Sawyer and Juliet, like you said, they kind of did that, but in their own way. I mean, they had their piece too. And for Rose and Bernard to be like, well, we love each other. That's, all that matters in the end. It's like, well, some people aren't fortunate enough to just sit back and watch everything go to hell. I'm glad y'all are enjoying it, but like some people are thrust right in the middle of it. Some from birth, okay? So let's get real and let's not like demean these people for trying to help out others. You know what I mean? I just feel like you can look at it at a little that kind of vibe, I mean, I think obviously they're well-intentioned. I love Rose and Bernard, but to kind of put themselves in this whole a little bit holier than thou, we're not getting into that. We're not touching it. Well, when Desmond shows up at your camp, you helped him out. When Sawyer, Jack, and Juliet came, you helped them out. You just sent them on their way. I get that, but some people aren't lucky enough for that to happen to them. Yeah, they have to they have to force their hand. Their hand is forced. They can't ride the fence.
There's a degree of which it always annoyed me that Rose and Bernard just disappeared in the beginning of season 5 when everyone else ran off, and like it made sense that they would probably just settle down and do their own thing. But like that they completely were never found, or like maybe went out of their way not to be found. Like that's I get it. Like they want their own space, but like it goes to the whole live together, die alone thing. Like they were with them in the camp, and it does feel weird that they almost just weren't bothered about them anymore. Like, you know, it's like, okay, we got friends, like cut off your friend list, or like
Okay.
really, like, we just didn't want anything to do with them. And it's like that's kind of I like them, but
two things I want to say.
Come on, Eric. Come on.
Flaming arrows.
It's happening.
No, flaming arrows. Okay. If I am your best friend, and I get you into a situation where there's flaming arrows and people are getting hit and dying, I probably wouldn't blame you for severing connections after that, right? We had a good run. It was great. Of course, there's that adage of like a good friend will bail you out of jail, but a best friend will be right in there with you going, yeah, that was amazing. But like flaming arrows, that's fine. Like they can leave. It's okay.
Sawyer didn't do that though.
I know, right? That's It's like being at a friend's house and then like, or not even at friends, you're with a friend and you go to another person's house. And then it's you blaming that friend you came with that something went wrong at the house. It's like, that's not my house. Like,
okay, that's fair.
Not Juliet's reason.
Let me try here. I'll try here.
Yeah.
They had tried to work with them to live together, die alone. They did everything that Jack wanted to do. They did everything what the group wanted to do, and every time they did, the group failed. Right? Yeah. That people died, and they just said, Rose is like, I should be dead, but this island saved me. And Bernard, they were just Bernard. What am I saying? They all should have died. They were in a plane crash. But I think they just got to the point where they said, you guys go on and do what you have to do. We're just going to live life in peace. And if you wanted to live life in peace, we'd be fine. But you guys don't. You're going to keep wanting to do this and this and this. We got to shoot this person. This person gets shot. I think they just had enough.
They found their own religion in a way.
Yeah.
For yet more people that Jacob just won't appear to and explain the whole game. They did what they could to understand that they were there for a reason and just kind of wrote it out.
But they assume that that's what Juliet, Sawyer haven't been doing.
Right.
They have been doing. So I get what you're saying, Caleb. Like they now know they're trying to stop Jack from destroying a bomb, but it sounds a bit like I actually love them. I'm just kind of doing devil's advocate here. I'm enjoying it because I like doing that. It's fun.
Yeah.
They sound like holier than thou. I get what you're saying because they do sound like they're assuming that they've been running around the island trying to blow each other up for 3 years. That's not what they've been doing, but it sounds like they think that's what's been going on.
Right.
We know that that's not the case. They've been settled, happy. All of them have jobs, kind of, and living a normal life. So
Sawyer was even like, "We were looking for you, and y'all just disappeared."
You could have joined drama, right? Like, so almost silly on them. They could have been even happier, maybe, like with a pantry as opposed to
modern conveniences,
pond or something. I don't know.
I want to see the Better Home and Garden. Goodspeed's cabin, future Jacob's cabin versus Rose and Bernard's cabin. I want to compare and contrast and see who had the better cabin.
They did take care of Vincent.
Yeah, they have a lot of experience building cabins because Tom kept on 77 went away, so their cabin went away. So then 2007, there it is again.
Oh my God. But I remember, speaking of Rose and Bernard, they were my top candidates for Adam and Eve. I did not expect the Adam and Eve reveal to be.
I thought it was going to be Jack and Kate.
The Man in Black and his mom. But hello, Rose and Bernard. That could have been where they got off to. I really felt like
that idea.
Maybe they went back to the cave and just settled down or were injured and died.
Yeah, I always had that idea.
Because originally, who's it? Jack or Locke says this clothing's 50 years old or something like that.
Yeah, it just didn't seem like they were 2,000 years old or however long it was.
And I think the writers even know that we were thinking that because they say that in the episode after the ones that are on this current thing. So We'll save that for later.
Yeah. Okay.
Well,
But getting back to what Kate does, is Ethan Ethan Goodspeed the best used recurring character in all of these Lost Sideways things? Like every time he's on the show, it's almost like a gotcha moment or like a breaking fourth wall. But like he always genuinely gets to play a character that like helps somebody else. Like he's actually a good dude, which if you remember how he was on the island, he's not a good dude at all. But
I would agree with you. Like actually, like there's like him, there's Keamy McKyle, like tertiary characters, not even like real main characters, but they had a lot of appearances and were quite important in the island storyline. They used, I think, Ethan the best way in that they showed how in verse of the island storyline, he's helping Claire. And like if he had never gone to the island, he might have just been a normal doctor, not being a psycho, right? So like that was a good way of showing maybe in his Sideways, he's just like wanting to have a normal life, right? It doesn't want to have anything to do with the island. And in his head, his last memories just before he gets shot by Charlie is, I'm a psychopath that's trying to kidnap a pregnant woman. Like that's not a good way for me to like carry myself into the next life or whatever. Like, can I remember maybe trying to help Claire? Like that's what he's trying to do. Like that's how he's trying to like get to his nirvana or whatever. Like
what changed Ethan from being, because his parents are pretty sane and pretty easygoing.
I think it's just Ben's corrupt leadership.
Yeah.
Like,
that's what I was thinking.
So crazy.
I was like, I can see Ben being like, do whatever it takes. Take Claire so Juliet can, administer, whatever. And, and also we see Ethan, he's another one of these characters. I mean, not in a roundabout way or not as well-rounded as Rousseau is, where you see her at various stages, or Eloise, but you do see him as a baby when Juliet successfully delivers Amy's child, which was Ethan. So,
sorry.
Go ahead.
I was about to say, like you were saying about well-rounded, like they developed him like in little ways in season 5. We found out him younger, but the maternity ward season 2 episode, like when we see what happened when Claire was taken, we see a lot of his discussions with her, and he does say, we want you to be sure, Claire, that what we're going to do. Like he asks her a lot about like I think that he thinks he's trying to do the right thing. Like he's been manipulated into doing all this awful stuff. I bet. I mean, he does hang Charlie from a tree. Like okay. Maybe it wasn't him. Maybe someone else grabbed Charlie. We don't know if someone else did that. We only know
Juliet would never.
No, so I'm not saying Juliet, but there was lots of others. Like maybe he grabbed Claire, and like 2 other people picked Charlie up.
It was Goodwin's wife.
Okay.
Oh, bleep her. Bleep her.
And he just took Claire. But like I always feel like in that episode, maternity ward, like. He, as creepy as he always was, and he played that really well, what he's saying, doesn't matter how he says it, what he's saying is like he's trying to be well-intentioned and trying to, basically help Juliet's plan to save the baby, right? So it's like coming from this place of goodness, but they're doing it in all the wrong ways because Ben's a corrupt leader. So it does make sense, and it is a good choice of having him in the Sideways as this like actually well-intentioned doctor, because I think that's how he saw himself in life.
When we have Ben, and we have young Ben and young Ethan, they go to Rousseau, who's just had Alex. Ben doesn't kill Rousseau, and he takes Alex because he was supposed to go there to kill them, right?
Yeah, and Widmore wanted the baby dead too. Yeah,
he wanted them both dead. He doesn't. Young Ben doesn't do that. When I'm saying young Ben, I'm not saying. Kid Ben. I'm saying, teenage Ben or whatever he is. So where did Ben start going to the dark side?
Well, it was either when he was brought to the temple, and who knows,
right? Heck
all about that, because I'm still super confused about the what is it? Infected.
Well, this was after the temple.
Yeah. Well, you ask when did he lose it, and I'm like, It could have been at the temple when he was, a young boy or whatever. But
but he didn't do what Widmore wanted to do. Of course, he wanted to show Widmore up.
Well, yeah, I think it's hard to tell whether his affections towards the infant Alex were a genuine shock at I can't kill a baby. It's a baby.
I don't think he was corrupt, like evil from the whatever happened at the temple. I think he lost his memory, and when they say he's no longer innocent, I think that in the sense of just like what he's been through, he's no longer innocent, and maybe that means there's a bit of some evil in him, a little bit more, but not pure evil. It's just a bit more evil on the spectrum, right?
But with Ben, is it somewhat you see it a lot where people get power.
Yeah.
To keep that power, they'll do anything to keep that power.
Yeah.
So once Ben got control, he never actually spoke with Jacob. So because they're always saying we're the good guys. So when the Losties crash on the island, suddenly they're evil. They're evil right away. They don't belong here. So is that what Ethan is? Is that what Ethan, like you said, he's been brainwashed or whatever it is?
Well, it's interesting that scene you mentioned, because basically Ethan says to him, I'm remembering it now. He says, do you want me to do it? I'll do it, Ben. I'll do it. He's saying, and what they're there for is to kill both of them, right? So Ethan said, I will impress you. You're my superior. And then it's Widmore as the next superior. But I'll do it like this. I'll kill a child, right? So there's always this level of they're all sucking up to the next in charge. So he's sucking up to Ben. And I think Ben is that much older and was, he's been through since a child he wanted to join the others and wasn't allowed to. I think he had enough time to sort of realize once he joined them that things could be done better. So I don't think, he's not sucking up to Charles. He's trying to challenge and show an alternate way of leading them. But I think Ethan at that point, Ethan's still young. So Ethan is definitely, I think, trying to suck up to Ben and be like, I'll do what we've been tasked to do here. Let me do it. And Ben's like, no, we're not here to do that, actually. So I think Ethan, when he was younger, probably tried to suck up to Ben and maybe always was. And that was exactly the worst kind of thing because, as we know, Ben needed henchmen. And I think that also maybe inflated Ben's ego and his power complex. Just having him, Goodwin, Harper, all these people who maybe were looking to have advancement and more power in that dynamic. They gave him that power because he had a very good way of always making us, even the audience, feel like he had power. And it was all the tension.
Well, Ben actually, also killed Horace in the Purge.
Yeah.
So, how bad of parents were Horace and Amy for Ethan to jump ship and just follow Ben blindly?
Listen, nobody on this show likes their dad. Nobody on this show likes their dad.
Yeah, they just had to write that. That was just a rule.
Yeah. To answer your question, I think Ben lost most of his sanity during the power struggle of wrestling the island away from Widmore. We don't see it. That's the area of time where it's blank, but it was a struggle because Widmore did not want to leave, even though he was being a little hypocritical. And I'm sure that Ben, that struggle for power, which is going on years later off the island, probably is what made him the most mad.
We're going on to Ben here quite a bit, but now we're talking about Ben and that sequence when he does kill his father. I'm even analyzing it in a way of he only can kill his father because of all the things his father has, treated him like crap all his life. But what if there is a part of Ben that's I'm doing this on Charles's orders. I don't want to have to murder my father. I'm just coming out from the point of why he doesn't kill Rousseau, right? There's obviously a good part of him that doesn't kill Rousseau and spares Rousseau and the child. So there is a good part of him. So if you're a good person, and even if your dad's done this kind of crappy stuff to you, maybe you wouldn't want to. But the only reason you're doing it is because you're being ordered to by Widmore. So you only push yourself to do it by being okay, I'm in the van with you. Let me tell you of all the crappy things you've done to me, Dad. And that's the way I'm going to justify what I'm going to do. So I'm even thinking of maybe when we first see that scene, it seems like he's pure evil, but maybe he is evil to do what he did. There's no question about it. But sense of him planning and scheming, it was obviously Widmore behind that.
Should Roger have said, "Hey, when you got shot, I cared about you."
That was the one time in your life.
I did.
You should be grateful.
I only drank a little bit less. Well, I drink less than I usually do, but I did care about you, and I shot the person that shot you. So, how about not killing me? Could he have said that, and maybe that would have no.
Could be.
I've seen maybe there's a conversation you had like last week or week before where you think about Forrest being a really inept leader. Like I think it boils down to that. Like, or someone else I watched on a reaction to the episodes, just how like he kind of is that sort of hippie, sort of namaste lifestyle in a nutshell, of like completely blind to what's really going on.
Right.
And I mean, it's almost a commentary on kind of that point in history, like in like 60s, 70s, of just all the stuff that was going on in the world and how it saw everything through peace and rainbows and everything. Like it just doesn't work out that way, and it ends up in people being brutally murdered because worse people can sneak in underneath the radar. So that's what happened to him. He was a good person, but I think what the island or Widmore, Ben saw is that he's not going to help them. Like, he's a good person, but like they need people that aren't going to be manipulated, or I don't know. So I just other thoughts there.
Do you think he had to do it? He had to, the way Ben had to lead, because Jacob didn't talk with him. Jacob didn't, even though he was doing everything supposedly Jacob wanted him to do, because Richard was bringing him notes, but he never got to speak to Jacob. So do you think his lack of not getting to speak to Jacob, he had a terrible dad. Go back to the daddy issue thing. Here's Jacob. He's the one he's supposed to be doing everything for, but Jacob won't talk to him. He can't see Jacob, all the different stuff. So Ben leads out of fear. Well, you know what? Jacob's watching. Jacob's doing this. I spoke with Jacob. Jacob, he always told people he spoke with Jacob. And we find out when he's with Locke that one time, Locke hears Jacob, but well, actually, it wasn't Jacob, wasn't it? No, it was Jacob at the time, but he didn't hear.
I don't know about that.
It wasn't Jacob. Yeah, it was Men in Black, right? Yeah,
I think so.
But either way,
yeah,
Ben didn't hear it.
Yeah,
so that's why That's why Ben led the way he did, because.
Yeah. It's a huge oversight on Jacob's part to not have. I mean, if he's the guy in charge of all your precious humans that you love and protect, and you're just gonna not show up like consistently to. There had to have been an excuse, because knowing that ultimately causes Jacob's death, there had to be some kind of rule why he had to test Ben in that way when he has to say, "What about you?" Consistently not showing up, that's just terrible leadership on Jacob's part, and had he been there.
I just think Jacob was like, there's a bunch of people that are on this island that came here because they wanted to find the island. They found out in some way that there was this power source. That's how the Dharma arrived. They found out that the island had this ability. They tested on it. So they've just got a bunch of people running around on the island that they didn't almost maybe invite. Like, maybe some of them Jacob was seeking out, but on the whole, a lot of the people there and a lot of the hostiles were kind of just in their park, and they didn't want them there. So I feel like Jacob was interested in Ben because Ben from a young age was wanting to join the others, but Ben had been through a lot at that point, and also had been kind of corrupted by how Widmore had led. So at that point, it's like, we've not really got a good candidate really to be the next Jacob, but maybe he can convince me. I need him to do a lot more work to show why I should bring him right to my side. Now compare that to Locke, who arrived as like a complete blank slate and was like wanting it and did pretty much everything for the island, and always. We can debate on how right or wrong Locke made his choices, but he wasn't a next level egomaniacal as Ben was, right? I would say, but maybe similar.
But like, to Eric's,
always a candidate that he didn't want to inherit, but he always was like, oh, maybe I'll give him a shot.
Yeah.
But to Eric's point, if he would have, because we see Ben not killing Rousseau and Alex. Mm-hmm. So there is hope for him. Why wouldn't Jacob meet with him? That seems to be the whole thing with Ben, because he has to lead out of fear, because he knows he's not. He tells everyone, I speak with Jacob. I see Jacob. Jacob doesn't want you doing this. Jacob doesn't want you. He's just going by what Richard's saying, or whatever he's trying to make up to keep the
He's
power.
almost daring every time he comes out with a new edict and credits Jacob for it. And Jacob wasn't the one who said that, because Jacob and Ben don't talk. He's challenging Jacob to come and contradict him, show up and say, I didn't want that. And Jacob doesn't. So over time, Jacob's become a joke to Ben. And
And I also like just the thought of, like, again, despite them having these kind of almost godlike abilities and powers, that they do pretty much show that they were human beings, Jacob, Man in Black, in form. And I just like the idea that maybe Jacob, as people do, like, he's not a god that can just have 100 people or millions of people in his head as candidates and equally invest in them all at one time. Like, that at a certain point, he lost interest in Ben. And he was like, oh, no, I'm actually now seeking out this guy, Locke and Jack, and, like, they're my next guys. So Ben's still hanging around, and he's, like, got him dangling there. And I know this is kind of dickish, but that goes back to what Caleb's mentioned before about him being, like, this flawed human being, which I think is an interesting thing to do on the show, right? Like, that he had Ben there in the wings, and Ben just kept taking his time to really come out and completely change how the others were looking after things. And then while that was not getting better, he was like, okay, I need to find some fresh blood. Let's get Locke, Kate, blah, blah, blah. They arrive. Oh, cool. They're better. Like, they're my new favorites. It's almost like he just kept, like, stopping and starting with new people, maybe here, left and center. And Ben just really got the bullet for that. And so I think he got kind of he got what was coming to him in a way, in that he kind of messed with people's lives, and that's why Ben does what he does in the end. Not right, it's justified, but you get why he does.
Speaking of, Jacob and the Man in Black, going into the substitute, I think it's a great episode, kind of, even with the Flash Sideways, but there's a lot of mythology. It's really, mythology heavy. And one point, the Man in Black tells Sawyer, and I wrote this down because I thought this was super important, and Jack, I know you think this way about Jacob as well, but the Man in Black told him, at some point in your life, referring to Jacob, he came to you when you were vulnerable or miserable. He came to you, manipulated you, pulled your strings like you were a puppet, and as a result, the choices you thought you made were never really choices. He was pushing you to the island. And that right there, I feel like says it all in regards to Jacob and how he just, like you said, picked his favorites, not favorites, plucked them here, blah, blah, blah.
You can die, you can live.
Didn't he just give Sawyer
the book, like, which ones are cool for my storyline here?
Yeah. Didn't he just give Sawyer a pen? Wasn't that so he could write the letter? Wasn't that all he gave him? Like, that's not a push. That's not manipulation. It's here, kid. Have a pen.
But because didn't his uncle say, "Don't write the letter"? It'll just make you angry. So Jacob gives him the pen. Write the letter. Remember this letter. You're going to see this letter every day because you're going to be reminded how much you hate the real Sawyer. So
okay, all right.
You've got things going on there. You've got the writers wanting to establish that Jacob is in part like this flawed person, and what Smokey is saying there is showing a new side to him we've not sort of thought of before, and that's the writers wanting to push that, and they're preparing us for that eventual reveal we get, where we find out who he is and all his flawed decisions. But it's also, they're writing that out of Smokey's mouth, and the writers again are trying to establish that Smokey is wanting to turn everyone against, Jacob, because he needs to get off the island. So it's like a two birds, one stone situation there with that line. It's like, we need to make everyone think that Jacob's actually piece of crap, in which he kind of
he is.
Yeah. We need to start to think that, and we also need to make it sound like Smokey really wants to think that because that helps him.
The Man in Black actually, he called Richard a fool and saying for following someone for a reason he does not know.
Yeah.
Which is the same thing, Ben was doing. And I'm like, yeah, they were brainwashed.
So you have Richard. We know now it was young Jacob. But at the time, I think at the time, did we know? That was a theory out there, right? That it had to be young Jacob just because.
Yeah, the way he looked, his hair, the blonde hair,
the
clothing.
I wrote down young Matt Damon because the kid looks just like a young Matt Damon. But
it was a different color. It was a bit like brown.
Why is Sawyer able to see him? Because he's a candidate?
Because he's a candidate, I would guess. Yeah. That's what I was guessing when I was watching it.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, who else could spook Smokey? If not the guy he just killed,
right?
So I
he tells him you can't break the rules, or that's not.
Yeah, you can't kill him.
You can't kill him. It's not one of the rules.
And I also wrote down that on the flip side, Richard knows why the Man in Black wants to leave. And because Jacob said bad things would happen, as the mother had said. But how do we know for sure? And I was like, I wrote down, if Jack plugs the cork back in and the Man in Black is still alive, I mean, can he leave? What's the deal? All we have this is from Mother. And Richard is he gets on the island and Jacob's like, he's bad. Try to go kill him. And he just believes that from here on out. And that's why I think it's important that the Man in Black is like, so you had no other reason to listen to Jacob other than him like trying to not, kill me or whatever.
So think about it. This is exactly one of the most tangent themes throughout the whole show. Like, we just got to keep pressing the button. What happens? We don't know. We just got to keep doing it. It's all about fear. Like, this is one of the things that they show in the show. It's like, we just stop like paying our bills and going to work. What's going to happen? We just have to keep doing it because we're terrified of what happens if we stop doing those things. It's like the same reason that Man in Black has to not leave the island. That why not? Well, just because. Like, there's all about these people stuck in this way of life and they're frozen out of fear. So I think that's kind of one that it's gone throughout the whole show, that idea. It's just kind of right.
And I've said this 100 times. If Jacob doesn't want Man in Black to leave the island, he just doesn't bring anybody to the island because he can't leave if nobody comes to the island. Right.
But I also get it. It's like he's not actually a god that can live forever, or he can, but he wants to die. I think that's an interesting idea in of itself. Right. We don't want to die, but some part of us wants mortality, and like we have a beginning, middle, end of life, and he probably wants that too, and he wants to pass on to someone else and leave it to someone. Like, so it's selfish, but it's like it's in keeping with like every other character in our show, and what we want for them is like a sense of meaning to their lives. Jack, Kate, Charlie, whatever. Like, Jacob is that, but he's got this huge responsibility, so we deny him of that. Like,
but I also said, I've said this 1,000 times also, that Man in Black just wanted to leave the island, could never leave the island, because stuck there, could not leave. He even says this one, I've been stuck here for thousands of years.
Wouldn't it unmake all of existence?
But Jacob can go off the island.
Yeah, but wouldn't it unmake all of existence if he did leave the island? Aren't we led to leave them?
This is why it's like we never would. I don't know. Like, and I kind of like to think that maybe not, and like that would have been a really they wouldn't have done it. But
I can just see Titus Welliver in a Hawaiian shirt, like sipping a cocktail at the LAX bar, just like chilling.
Yeah, like. Well, no, it would be Locke, right? Wouldn't it? Like it'd be in the form of Locke. Wouldn't it?
Oh, I guess.
Oh, yeah.
Really sailed away and been like, oh, what do I do now? Like, that would be a really funny series, just like a comedy show. He just goes job.
Yeah,
It's kind of
writers.
story.
Here's your premise: is an animated series. Everyone you loved from Lost is dead because the Man in Black won. But he's gonna travel around now. He finally gets to go home.
No, but like I actually kind of don't think it makes sense because the reason he can't leave is because there's a part of the island keeps the Smokey alive, but they destroyed that when they unplugged the thing. So that wasn't part of him anymore. So he was a human again. So technically he could have left the island.
Yeah.
And they could have plugged the Oh my god, have I just ruined it? Wait, okay. I'm gonna keep ruining it until I can unprove what I'm ruining.
No, I had the same thought.
Plug the thing back in, the island would have been okay.
Right.
And maybe it's just a man on a little boat that arrives somewhere and is okay.
But once the thing was plugged back in,
he would become.
I don't think so.
The powers come back to him?
I don't think so. I feel like
the cork is unplugged, and then Man in Black is
fell over dead.
Mortal.
Right.
So,
yeah.
But the island will sink unless the cork's put back in. So if you put the cork back in, then Man in Black once again becomes. He has all this power.
In a way, it would be if they unplugged it, it kills him. Plug it back in again, he comes back to life. Like he's tied to the power of the island. So if you unplug it, it kills him. But I think they didn't do that because they wanted there to be a Jack versus Locke sequence and Jack or Kate to be the ones to kill him. That's just like how you do your hero's journey. Your villain gets killed by your main character. But in the laws of what would make sense, it would be that you unplug it, it would kill him. Put it back in, he's alive again. I like that, makes a cleaner logic. So it means that we don't have a clean logic of what's really going on here. You unplug it, now he's immortal. So if you put it back in again, now he's immortal again. It's not as clean.
Similar to that, I like it that the Man in Black was not always the smoke monster, and that becoming the smoke monster was an abomination because of what Jacob did to him.
Right.
Like, I like that. So
makes Jacob more of like hateable.
Oh well, yeah, but not only that, but like then it means the Man in Black is not infinite the way the island is. It like there's slight skew. You know, like once you kill the Man in Black, it's not like you could get another smoke monster just because you'd have to do the same process. It's not like there always has to be a smoke monster the way that there always has to be a protector of the island. I guess that's what I'm saying, but. Obviously later season 6 stuff. I want to talk about Helen.
Yes, let's. And Jack, I don't want to hear you say what I think you're going to say about how Helen was working with Locke's dad the whole time and she's evil. I don't want to hear it anymore.
Jack, do you believe that? Jack?
I honestly believe it.
Oh man.
In Locke's alternate world, oh yeah, Helen stays with him no matter. Come on, that was a huge lie. he went to it with what are these knives for? I went on a walkabout. I got fired. I went to see my dad. I'm leaving you. Oh, I'll never leave you.
Yeah.
So yeah, okay. Tell me more.
Well, I will say I like the dynamic here that Locke is not completely fixed, right? He's still in the chair. This is a world without the island, so what's the benefit to him? He's still kind of sad, and he's dishonest to his partner. Like I like seeing Locke put himself in the hot water of being dishonest to somebody he cares about, because then you really wonder what his motivation is, because it's not necessarily that the world is awful and everything sucks and everybody's been awful to him. Helen's clearly not awful to him, but he's still dishonest with her.
And now
Randy's still a jerk.
Story before he was dishonest with her, and that's why she eventually left him. So
you also have him staring at a mirror and reflecting on if he should call Jack or not with the business card, just like Kate was reflecting in the previous episode of should I, go back to Claire and help her out or not.
Yeah. And he must have a relationship with his dad because Helen says, we got to invite your dad.
I know. It must be a
weird,
totally different relationship.
So this is where it's like this is where I find it quite interesting, where we have like a lot of the main characters, this is their in between, you know, and some tertiary characters like Ethan. I think that makes sense that in Ethan's head, he constructs a place where he can be this great person and helps Claire. That's cool. I can get that in his head and what he wants. But for Helen, when she died, as she died from cancer, we find out in the real world that she imagines that she's with Locke and getting married. I don't buy that. So I think this is more a apparition of what Locke would want as he's dying and before he moves on. He needs to make peace with having some happiness with Helen, even though that's not the end game for him. She doesn't move on with him. He needs to, before he can move on, address that he messed up and he was dishonest, but then in this version, he's dishonest, but then he is honest. Yeah. So he does the right thing this time. So it's definitely more, and I kind of think this is Nadia as well for Saeed. Like, this is Helen for Locke, and I feel like Nadia for Saeed, which is another one. But like, they're in that similar camp of, this isn't really their manifestations of what they would want to experience. I think they probably have different things. So yeah, how do we get onto this point? Yeah, I just think that Helen, they're more as what he needs than this is Helen's spirit or Helen's subconscious creating what she wants out of this.
I think that's well reasoned, because it was probably a really good, I don't want to say girl power moment, but like, you do have to remove the people in your life that are not going to change and are not going to grow with you. Right. You know, Locke is a very sympathetic character. We get it. He's got daddy issues, but like, Helen really had to move on, and that was a hard choice for her. But I can see myself say, like, I can see her not going back to Locke in the afterlife because of that.
Yeah.
It's like, that's like thinking that I'm going to show up.
He continually.
I'm going to show up in one of my ex's afterlives, like as a doting partner or something. That's terrifying to me. Right. No, go away.
But then you're like, someone else has a memory of you. God knows how you appear in there, you know, perceive what other thing. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Like, Helen probably just went on, was happy, but little does she know, like, he had her in his memory, and she was vital for him in like coming to terms with his death, etc. Like, so, but what's important is that he doesn't move on with her. Like, I think everyone that's in that church with each other is actually there and wants to be there, not like manifestations of their desire. Like, that makes sense to me. You think about everyone in the church, that they all make sense as wanting that.
Wasn't that just the people that ABC could afford?
That's too simple.
I think it's who they could get as well.
Yeah. But I would also try and ascribe a solid testable reason to it. So I like that a lot.
I do think.
Sorry, go on.
Go ahead.
I think it's great seeing Helen. It's great seeing Randy.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really this is the victory lap of Lost. Yes. You know, bringing everyone back. Oh, and the Kate episode. The first 3 episodes of the season are like the Arzt trilogy. Because Arzt makes the appearance, and then the cab runs over his bag. He's like, "I'll get your license." But yeah,
I'm walking here.
These cameos won't stop. They just keep coming, and I really like it. And seeing that actress get a lot of work after the Locke storyline even the flashbacks moved away from her. It was great to see her back.
I really like the 2 episodes in season 2. It's like, when you think about it, like, they kind of were doing a sidetrack. Like, Locke kind of had his main story as like the guy in the wheelchair. Then it becomes then he's got his father issues. So like, by this point, that she became like a third plot with him. Like, she was like a super subplot. But I actually really enjoy, despite that being like, it's like a 3rd or 4th flashback, I really enjoyed those episodes in season 2 with her. I think it was really important they did explore the idea of, like, you know, having a constant, but it's not going to work for everyone in that typical romantic fashion. Like, and that makes him more a tragic foil for like Jack. But I just think that's really beautiful. Like, it's not a happy ending for them, but he's he did find some happiness in the end, and like she did help him at the end of the day. She did help him in his journey, and that's what's nice. Yeah.
But he helped her none.
Right. He didn't.
So.
He didn't. No. That's why
Yeah.
she probably doesn't think much of him and wherever she goes to in her afterlife, but like she did something good to him, you know?
I was going to say that, like, in The Substitute, we have several things answered for us. I mean, there's a handful of things I wrote down. First of all, we get confirmation from Alana that the Man in Black is stuck in Locke's body from here on out, which was still a question.
Yeah.
We also get, it was kind of cool to see the Smoke Monster's perspective when he's flying through. You hear the music Sawyer's listening to, things like that. You also have the Man in Black answering the question about if all candidates are touched by Jacob before coming to the island. And the answer is yes, he literally says that. Do we believe him? Is he a reliable narrator? Maybe. And then you have this cave scene where the numbers are
Revealed.
somewhat explained. So I think that
Jacob had a thing for numbers.
He had a thing for numbers.
I personally like that almost so not answering it approach. I really kind of like it because there's two ways you do it. Like you either really go in, and I think Damon Lindelof said like the worst way of doing it would have been like the architect in the Matrix. Like, let's just tell you every single way, like all the answers to this show, right? Or you do it in the ambiguous way and just cough up to the fact that like you really expect us to do this. Well, if you really expect us to do this, like kind of here's a middle finger, like we're going to be as opposite as we can. And in that vein, though, still give a really good scene of like it kind of, I like that idea. And like it was just some basic arbitrary list on a wall. That is great to me. It's like just, again, it goes back to this idea of there being this huge high and mighty meaning to things in religion or in like things in culture, in history that we've looked at. But if you were to meet those people, they'd be like, yeah, I just kind of wrote it one day and that was it. Like, done. Like, I kind of love that. It's like this tilting of the hat that like everyone is a person in the day. We kind of look to people in history or people that come before us as being godlike or more powerful, but no more powerful than us. It's just because they come before us. We have this like expectation of something mightier and greater. I kind of dig it. Like, and it's annoying if you want answers, but I just like that commentary that it gives.
I did realize upon rewatch that I have come to the full conclusion. I know it's debatable who 42 refers to. Is it Jen because he's a guy and Jacob later says that, you know, Kate, you became a mom, so I marked your name off the list. Is that because Sun, you know, was a mom? Whatever. Because the Man in Black says that Jacob brings people there by touching them, I believe since he touched Jen and Sun at the same time, they are both 42.
Right.
Maybe later, once Sun does become a mom, she's technically ineligible or whatever Jacob said, but it wasn't enough to mark it out of the cave because Jen is still an option for 42. So I think because Jacob touched them at the same time, they're both 42. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree. They were both like in the exact same dilemma, the same bind when we meet them in season 1. Like they have a same arc in different directions and different ways, but they were both like coming from a place of they wanted to get out of South Korea and move to America, but they wanted to get away. It's away from her father. So they were both potentially viable to like want to get away and maybe like settle on the island, like, and solve their issues. Like he maybe thought of them in like, either one of them will want this. So I'm not going to count either one of them out. Just put Quan. So
I think the biggest question I have is, would any of you climb down that ladder?
Not now. Not seeing how it nearly killed Sawyer. Nope. No
that's
way.
another one where I kind of wonder, because when that ladder collapses, he's trying to help Sawyer down there. So up until that point, it might look like he's kind of wanting them to kill themselves because that's how the rules work, right?
Yeah.
Right.
But then he saves him.
He saves them. So it's one of those things moments where even on a rewatch, it kind of makes you think, oh, is it this or is it that? Like, it could have been that.
Do we find out how they got back up? Now we know
He
rode the smoke.
He just gave him a boost. Just a little.
I was gonna say that by keeping Sawyer alive longer, it really did help out the Man in Black, because I completely, if Jack is to blame for the incident, Locke is to blame for
everything else,
a lot of things, but Sawyer is completely to blame for the sub explosion later in season.
So balance it out. Definitely.
If Man in Black had not kept Sawyer alive, then you wouldn't have lost like 3 candidates.
He didn't want him to die. He really was trying to save him.
Sawyer?
Man in Black was trying to save Sawyer when Sawyer was swinging back and forth.
He wanted the buy-in.
He needed help. Now that Sawyer's quite an influential, smart guy, if he wants to join Man in Black, other people might follow him. So he's like, he's going to help me gather the people together.
Right.
Maybe he is also, Sawyer's kind of down and out and like doesn't give a damn about anything anymore. So maybe he is thinking, actually, is this guy going to drag his heels and not be any help to me whatsoever? Like, if he is, I'm just going to let him go down that ladder and die because I need someone else to help me. So maybe he's kind of waiting to see how he, do I want him or not? And in the end, he's like, okay, actually, I'll take him. Like, I'll save him.
Which he did. Yeah, I'd probably pass on the ladder. Just saying. You brought me down this ladder to see a cave.
It's like a real life Jacob's ladder. You join.
That's on the soundtrack. What the track's called? Jacob's Ladder.
I think it is. Yeah.
That wasn't by accident. Yeah.
Yeah.
I do like how Man in Black throws the white rock.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it's an inside joke. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
So good.
And Claire is now taking on the role of crazy person wandering around the woods setting traps.
Right.
Yeah. She's the new Rousseau.
Yeah. So what do we all think about that?
Well, we had
I think
we earlier, like we said, the whole season and a couple episodes. And then Claire?
Yeah, I think honestly, I think it's one of the most heartbreaking character arcs on the show. You know, whether you say that her character's done justice or not and fully developed, I mean, it can be debated. But in terms of where she ends up psychologically, and I mean, she may escape, but Lord, she's got to have a lot of therapy. She can't just be around her son. And if Claire's any type of person, she already recognized the crazy going on. So I think it's pretty, to think back to season 1, the pregnant girl Claire, go from killer in the woods, wearing plaid.
That's how you know she's lost. She's truly lost it.
Yeah. And she has, which is sad because I think she was manipulated by the Man in Black. Obviously she was. And she was left behind and all that. So
don't go ahead.
I was going to say I like the poetry of it being like the Rousseau. Now we see one of our characters in that same bind. I like that. And again, it's like Alex was taken away and now she's trying to find Aaron. Like I really like that parallel that we've already experienced it, but now we're seeing it through one of our Lostie's eyes. The only thing I find with it is just how it's executed, how that characterization is done, how she's behaving, how she speaks, some of the scenes and how they're done. And I feel like, again, it's one of those cases where I said about there being an extra episode for, or was it something else? But I feel like it could have been an episode in season 4 or 5 or elsewhere to find out what really went on. Because I think it's a really big part of her character arc that we don't get is she being independent, because one of the biggest things in her backstory was her being afraid to raise Aaron, her being afraid to be a responsible adult to lead and take care of someone else. So there would have been a really nice poetry and continuation of that arc in that she's taking care of herself and finding out to be self-sufficient. And like that would have been a really good centric episode, just her like in the present, maybe with Jin, or like being captured by the others in between like those 3 years, and her flashing back to, like a bit like the Fleur episode, at the end of that 3 years and at the beginning, and meeting in the middle.
Yeah.
I think we would have in a beautiful way so that we can totally swallow and absorb her being so weird in season 6, because it's just such a world away. I think that would have smoothed the character arc out a lot nicer, but I understand they didn't have time. It's just, that's all I kind of think of it. It's just like, it's not as neat as some of the other ones are. And I can go with it, but yeah.
I was going to say, shouldn't anyone who returns back from that island need therapy?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. I just think that, obviously Sawyer, he's lost the love of his life. Kate did too. Miles is, dealing with, they're all dealing with the trauma. Richard's beginning to age, but in terms with Claire, I think she's in the worst state, mentally and emotionally. They basically have to drag her on the plane almost.
Right.
So her readjusting would be a nightmare.
Yeah.
And finding out that her mom's alive and dealing with those emotions, that she was the cause of the wreck that left her mom in a coma for all these years. She
knew that, right? She was with her when she was in the hospital.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Claire does not know that her mom has awoken from the coma.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I always thought this, that I don't think any of them, and we never will know this unless they try to do a continuation, but I hope they don't. I don't think any of them had good lives in a normal sense. I think they probably maybe sound happiness, but the reality is they are on a plane. That plane's going to land at an airport. That airport's going to be like, where the hell is this plane just landed from? The federal government get investigating. They realize that one of the people on there has been already in one of the Oceanic 6 already. So she's either going to go back to prison because she also broke her parole or whatever she was. So that's not good for Kay. Sawyer was actually in Oceanic 15, and so was Claire. And then we got Richard and Miles. Like, who are these people? Like, they are under serious eyes from the government when they get back, and there is no I can't see that being a normal life.
But see, Richard is used to coming and going, so I think all he has to do is, hey, Frank, fly these coordinates, and we're going to land here.
In a safe house.
We're going to contact Ben and Hurley back on the island. They're going to give us all the proper passports, documentation. I feel like it seems far-fetched, but they could totally get away with it.
So there's that option. There's that, and then there's your option here. But in either case, there's like this hidden identity life that they all go into.
Well, they're going to have to lie.
Again.
That
they, as soon as they crashed on the island, everything went wrong in a sense that they could never go back to normal life again.
Because you're not supposed to survive a plane crash,
right? For sure. But
3,000 feet.
It was also the fact that they landed on an island that was meant to be kept secret. Like, that's why they were trying to keep it secret.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a good place to stop.
Okay.
Unless you guys have something else. I never thought about when they come back.
People always like these ideas. I read on fan groups about ideas of a spinoff. I just always think it's either like what you said, like they're making these fake identities, or Richard doesn't have the herewithal to think of that, and he's like, no, I'm done doing this on and off island lifestyle with hidden locations and secret identities, and he just goes along with it, and then they all get caught and put in questioning. I can't see a really clean, sort of easy outcome. So it makes more sense again why, when you know what their eventual purgatory sort of afterlife is they're like, yeah, that time when like kind of we weren't in that situation was kind of better. Like those people.
Maybe they can do like a New Hope. They can hide in the cargo section.
Oh yeah, just under the floor.
Yeah, under the floor, and then they
autopilot.
no one here, and then they sneak off.
Honestly, just the fact that a second plane disappeared over the Pacific Ocean should be the biggest news story in the world. Like, and that the Oceanic Six were like all on it.
It used to be the Bermuda Triangle was a really big deal.
Yeah,
I think disappeared from that area and ever since like the last 30, 40 years. I mean, it was big when I was a kid. I mean,
when I was young, it was totally, yeah, absolutely. I thought, what's going on there?
Yeah, and now
you don't hear about it anymore.
I was going to say about the title again, the substitute, like because we talked about the parallels, but that one being the parallel to the line in season 5 where Locke's brought back in the coffin as a substitute for Christian.
Yeah,
that's what Eloise says, and then teacher, like again, just another little Easter egg thing. What other points? I think that's it. I kind of just like them being teachers in the school. An extra thing to say. Like, I thought that was really.
Why do you think
been such a nice guy?
European history, like Napoleon and stuff.
Oh, and that's perfect for him. But like, why did they go out of their way to show that Locke was teaching like reproductive health?
That was weird.
Why do you think they added that out of all the different subjects?
What other teacher is a man of science, right? Like, what other teacher is didn't he want to go to science camp as a kid? You know, he's real. Am I making that up? Was it math camp? Was science camp?
Some kind of camp.
Some kind of biology.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't know how we were meant to react to that scene. To me, I just was like, huh? Like, I get what you're thinking. They don't even waste a second or a line in Lost. Like everything has a meaning. Like,
right. That's why I was like,
that about? What was that like? And maybe it's a kind of joke at the expense of him being like, you know, you're doing this. Like I would never picture Locke doing this, but again, like he has a job at a box factory. Now he's teaching teenagers about, you know, that. Like it's kind of like another kick. Like he could have been doing something a lot cooler and teaching them. So yeah.
It's also interesting that Rose mentioned about her cancer again.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, we should mention that. Yes. Yeah. That's
so
true.
Even still in the Flash Sideways, she's aware of it at least.
Yeah. Right.
Okay.
And again, I think you guys mentioned on the last one that you think Rose was already and Bernard were aware of where they were within that first episode. So another instance maybe of them being like nudging to them, like to sort of some pearls of wisdom, like maybe. I think they're awake and aware of where they are. They're just kind of, I like that idea anyway.
I like that a lot.
Yeah.
They're just watching and waiting them to figure it out. But yeah.
So they're already dead? Is that what we're going to say? Bernard was dead the whole time?
Yeah, and also the Ajuraflot, they were all dead on the Ajuraflot, and then it crashed on its way back when they were trying to leave the island. So they were dead and died, you know, when the plane crashed. They never made it off the island.
Yeah.
At the same time, yeah. So their bodies are technically in like, you know, 2000 BC or something.
I've lost you guys.
Just making it up.
Just making it up.
Anyway, anything else? I know it's pretty late for you.
I was completely lost there. So
that's the name of the show.
What time is it there for you, Samuel?
Oh, it's
like
just
4 a.m.
But I was saying to Jack that this is kind of Lost has always ended up doing this. The finale, when they did it, they aired it at the same time in the UK as it was in the US.
Oh, wow.
When that was in 23rd of May of 2010. I remember being up at like 5 in the morning, like early/late. I can't remember. That was an experience, you know. So
probably couldn't sleep anyway.
Yeah.
I I was that hooked on the show. Like I remember, like because I would get up at like 6 to 7 in the morning because they would upload them to watch the next morning in the UK. So I was already doing it, but an extra degree in the fact that it was live on that time. So yeah.
You probably really hated their commercials. You're like, gosh.
Yeah, it was quite an experience.
That's the best thing now. No commercials.
I do think that another reason why a lot of people don't like the season as much is I think they went hard on the marketing in regards to this episode's going to answer your questions. This episode's going to answer more of your questions. And they just kept on doing that. And then you had like the slow 5-episode arc or more of the temple and, things like that. So I did want to point that out.
I think they had to put the temple in there to be able to fill the 42 minutes, right? They had to have it's almost like when in season 3 where they had Nikki and Paolo, they were trying to.
Yeah, they totally had like a checklist of things that they like. We can do this. We've got time to fill. We've got 16 episodes, with which 5 of them are really going to be intensely focused on our end game. We can just in this 10 or so episodes really get out the door a lot of the last mythology questions, the temple, the infection, all of that. Like let's deal with that.
Richard is.
And it's all that. Like, it feels like that when you're watching it. I remember feeling that back then, and even more now. So that's where they were in a bind. They were like, we just got to get to the end here. Whereas earlier seasons had so much like mystery and intrigue that you never felt like it was boring. Whereas this was like, we're kind of at the end of the barrel now. This is getting like there's no more that fizz to what's happening because we can see it, and it's like there's no more hidden magician's trick. So it does feel, like I said, threadbare. So that's the only thing I would agree on. It was like season 6 it feels threadbare. Doesn't feel as like dense as the others did. And that's what a big part of Lost was the after episode discussion and not knowing and all of those things that are yet to come. Whereas this season it feels so much like we're just hitting that end of the road now and there's nothing left to discuss. It's kind of a bit sad when you kind of think about it.
Well, you mentioned after the episode, I remember after the finale, it was either you hated it, you liked it, you were okay with it. There wasn't really any discussion about, mythology and all the other stuff that we talked about after every episode. Oh my God, what's going on with this? It was like, it was mostly you hate it, you were a sellout if you hated it. If you loved it, you were a sellout. If that was a lot of people in that camp. So I do remember that, where it was a lot of people just talking about how much.
So there was one thing that's really interesting recently. Do any of you know the YouTuber called Shawnee B? He used to do all these.
Yes. Have you seen his latest video where he finally covered the finale?
Yeah. So I was going to bring that up.
Incredible.
Yeah, well, I thought that was a really interesting story in that he did every single episode in like this recap review format, and he was super interested in the lore and the mythology and answering all the questions. And he never uploaded a finale episode recap for which there was just like days, then weeks, and months of people commenting and because he had so many people following him, so many. And it never came out, and it kind of sort of spoke to the fact that those kind of viewers just didn't know how to respond to the finale. He probably didn't like it, but also didn't want to come out and say it because there's a part of him that still loves the whole show. He didn't know what to do maybe, and he left it for years and years, and only just now has he posted this recap review of it several years later, and he just says in it I needed to kind of grow up and realize kind of what the show was about before I could appreciate it. And I think that says a lot, for someone that I think clearly didn't like it. We say there was love or hate. I think there's a lot of people that if they did what he did and rewatched it or found a new meaning to it, they might look differently on it. It was interesting to see that video. I was kind of there is hope maybe for people that really hated it. At some point in life, maybe some things in life will make them see it anew, because there is so much stuff in it, meaning to everyone's kind of situation in life. I think you need to be ready to receive it. Like that. I encountered loss at the right time in my life. There was things going on in my life that were a bit troubling, and like I related to the characters. Like that made me appreciate the finale. But I guess if you just love the mysteries and you don't really get what the value of like the riddle of the show is and what these characters are dealing with in their lost state in life, if that doesn't relate, then I don't think you care too much necessarily. So you would be a bit mad that was all it was about.
Right.
So yeah, I think people can love or hate it, but I think in time some people can come around to love it, which is awesome.
Yeah, cool.
All right. Great job. Anything else you guys want to talk about? Do you have podcasts or books or anything else you guys want to mention?
Well, I have a book, if you mentioned it. It's called Harnessing Darkness, Expressing Mental Illness Through Poetry. I'm trying to shed light on mental illness and the stigma regarding that. You can learn more at calebislost.com. You can find my book on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, places like that. And I always say, since I've been on here for the past 3 weeks, and it is election time, so be sure to go and vote. It is extremely important. Yes, very important. Thank you.
I'll echo that. And I have a new podcast called Thank You for Spieling. It's Spieling. Caleb was a guest on episode 2. Thank you very much.
Awesome.
Got to get you back soon. Hopefully, maybe in a post-election season.
I'll have a lot to say. I have a lot to say right now.
But check that out wherever podcasts are found. Light change.
I'll echo the voting thing. I know I'm not over there, but anyone that can.
That's quaint.
Too. I know, yeah. There's that to start. Yeah, anyone that likes Lost, follow on my Twitter, I guess. I posted a Lost musical theme series recently in the last several months. It's just like my covers of the Michael Giacchino character themes. I've made like very like tracks of like combining a lot of them together, which like quite a few people had already seen maybe. So yeah, I'm going to be posting more at some point when I can get back home to play my piano. But yeah, other than that, just follow along in case you like Lost stuff. I post and retweet it all the time.
Well, thanks for staying up late with us. I appreciate that.
Sure.
I know it's late for you.
No, it's cool. Good to join.
Well, this was good. Good talk. Great job.
Thanks.
Yep.
Awesome.
All right, guys. We'll be back next week for I can't remember the next 2 episodes.
The Lighthouse.
And
Sundown.
There we go.
Yeah.
We'll be back next week for those.
Play some Gordon Lightfoot.
Yeah. All right, guys.
Jack's son is basically the equivalent of Helen to Locke. So in terms of like their progression and helping them move along. Okay, bye.
I forgot all about that.
Segue.
I'll say one last thing. Down, House of Rising Sun, season 1. So that's the last thing I'm saying.
Sundown. Oh yeah.
Nice. That's a great way to end it.
Yeah.